Hey folks, welcome back to our channel. My name is Nigel and this is Offgrid Van Life, where we look at van conversions, lithium iron phosphate batteries, off-grid power systems. Basically, we want to help you to get on the road, find adventure, and have an epic van and electrical system so that you can run whatever you want on it while you are finding that adventure. In this video, we're going to be looking at the floor. So I'm going to be putting down the floor in this van, or at least the subfloor. Ultimately, it's going to be finished off with with vinyl on the floor. That's what I've decided to put in this van. Number of reasons: easy to install, easy to clean, easy to replace if it ever gets damaged, all that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. So I spoke last time in the last video. If you're interested in seeing that, there's a link down in the description where you can look at our last video on the channel. Yeah, I spoke about the insulation and how we're going to insulate this van, what our preference is, because I mean it's a bit of a minefield, to be honest. Loads of people have differing opinions, and there are so many options and different R values and what's best, all that sort of stuff. But in this van, I'm going to be using the foam board with the foil on either side, with some spray foam to kind of fill the gaps between these ridges, and then I'm going to be putting it before I do that, I'm going to be putting out a frame to actually frame it all in, spray the spray foam in there as well, and then putting plywood on top of that. So yeah, it should be pretty straightforward to get that down. So we're going to get after it now. Yeah, let's go. So my basic approach is to put down a wooden frame. So using battening, so I'm using 30mm by 25mm battening like this. And initially I was actually going to find a way of fastening it down to the base of the van, so to the floor bed. But I actually made the decision that I was going to glue it down using Sikaflex. So you guys know, if you've been following for a while now, that I absolutely love Sikaflex. It's such a good product, and it really is powerful stuff. So I made the decision that I wasn't going to drill any more holes through the floor of the van. There were a few threaded holes where there used to be lashing points on there. I did consider using those, but then, to be honest, the more I thought about it, I just thought actually a couple of advantages of using the Sikaflex option is that it then takes away that direct contact between the metal and the wood, so potential of thermal bridges, and it's just super strong. So here I'm just screwing some bits of ply onto the bottom of the battening. You can see there just next to my left hand where I needed to raise up the battening across some of the bigger gaps between the ridges. So they probably would have been fine, but I just don't want any of this stuff warping or sagging or anything like that. A couple of places I'm going to have the water tank and calorify and stuff like that, which will be reasonably heavy once they are full of water. So I just want to have this as strong as possible. So had a combination of just screwing everything together using 4mm in diameter screws. I think they were like 40 mils long or something like that. The places that I couldn't get to, I used sort of corner brackets, so just plastic corner brackets. You can see what I'm doing there. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Just put it all together. I had the battening running along the top of some of the ridges, so it took a bit of work just to get that right and get it centered. And the Sikaflex did a great job. So I just ran a bead all the way down the length of each of the lengths going down the van. Didn't go overboard with the Sikaflex, just enough basically to stick it down and create a good connection there. I was pretty happy with that. Removed the chocks that I had used to just lift it up so that I could get underneath it. and push it down, weight it down. Just walked all over so that I got some weight on it and pushed it down. And then it was the same drill for the back parts. I did it in 2 separate stretches, just found it a bit easier that way. But it was the same sort of drill. Screwed in where I could and then used the corner pieces to connect stuff in the corners when I couldn't get access to it. Rather than taking it in and out, I just put it together in situ. Again, put cross members between all of the lengthways. Probably was a little bit overkill putting as many as I did, but I hate floors that sag. I also didn't want to have any room for the plywood to move and create gaps between any of the joints or anything like that. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And same drill with the Sikaflex. Obviously this one was a bit easier. I could lift it right out of the way and put Sikaflex down on all of the ridges where the frame was going to sit. And then just lower the frame down and place it on the Sikaflex and screw down the other end, join it to the other frame using corner brackets, and then weight everything down so that the Sikaflex sticks nicely. Alright, update on where we're at, folks. We've got the battening down. A lot of people just go the lengthways. I've chosen to put some cross members in just because I don't want my plywood sagging. I'm not putting any laminate flooring or anything like that in here. It's just going to be 12mm plywood. So this is the route that I've taken. So I'll obviously cut out all of the blocks of insulation to put into all of the gaps. And then I'm going to put expanding spray foam in all of the ruts, because obviously the foam board insulation, the recticile, will sit on top of those. So the expanding foam will serve 2 purposes. One will be to just act as an adhesive to actually stick it in and hold it in place, and then secondly we'll just add another layer of insulation. Also, you would have seen, have opted to actually Sikaflex the frame down on the floor, so pretty happy with how that's looking now. So Sikaflex is very strong and it's flexible as well, so it's not rigid, it's not going to be brittle or anything, but it's solid. I mean, this floor will not go anywhere. In my opinion, it's stronger than if you screwed it down. Did it in 2 parts just because it was easier to do it that way. So I'm going to get on with cutting out the foam board to put in here, and we'll get that glued in. The end here, I've actually just placed this bit here on the end just to close it off, just on top of this trim, so it's not glued onto here. This is loose. It's kind of just pushing it down to stop that from moving at all. But if we ever need to get this trim off to work on any of this stuff, we can still access all of these little things here, which is how you actually get it off, and it would be able to slide out that way. So pretty happy with that, to be able to get after that. But it also just makes it a nice clean edge there. So yeah, heard some people complain about if you use battening like this that you get a thermal bridge. I don't think it's a big deal, and having used Sikaflex like this, the wood is obviously not in direct contact with the metalwork, so I think we'll be fine. Plus with the expanding foam, it's going to help with that as well. So yeah, pretty happy with how it worked out. Just basically screwed all of these together. Bits that were difficult to access, I used those corner braces like that, as you can see there. So yeah, once we get the plywood on here, this is going to be a solid floor. And then it was time to cut out the insulation and get that ready to stick down. So measured out all of the holes and cut them out each individually. I landed up using Recticel, which is a insulation board that we get here in the UK. It was pretty straightforward to use. I just measured out all of the cuts, obviously then just marked them out with a pencil, a ruler, and then I landed up actually just using a standard wood saw. There's a couple of ways you can cut the stuff, and I don't think there's a better way, it's just whatever's your preference. So a wood saw is pretty straightforward. It works better on the push movement rather than pull, so my method was, as you can see there, push it and cut while you're pushing it, then lift it up to pull it back towards you. Just found that to be the easiest. I also cut a few with a knife, just with a Swiss Army knife. That works as well, but I don't think the Swiss Army knife's any easier than the wood saw. So yeah, pretty straightforward, just a little bit tedious cutting all of those out. Again, if you really press for time, if you had less cross members, so you're cutting fewer cuts of these boards, just having bigger pieces, obviously that would make things go much quicker. But just with the way that I framed this out, this was pretty straightforward. I then went about actually foaming everything up, so I foamed up all of the gaps between various places, and then put a layer of foam underneath where the Recticel board was going to go. So obviously you don't want to go overboard here because the stuff expands and it will end up lifting the boards up, but I put a bit down so that I have, for a couple of things, it will stick and hold the board down, acts as an adhesive, but it also will offer an additional layer of insulation, remove the thermal bridge between the wood and the floor as well, and yes, it would potentially also offer a vapor barrier as well, because the expanding foam is waterproof. And then I just foamed around all of the boards. I pushed them so that, as you can see here, just push it, open up that gap, just filled them with the expanding foam so that it seals up nicely all the way around there. And then put a couple of weights on top just to hold it down. Obviously the expanding foam will expand and push it up slightly, but with a bit of weight on there it'll just help to hold it down so that it doesn't expand too much. And then it was just the process of going through and doing that with every single gap, every single square. And then once it's expanded and dried out, you can then cut all the excess bits off. I just use a Swiss Army knife. Pretty straightforward. Just cut that neatly so that it's all flush and level, so that you don't have any high points that will lift your plywood up. And then we were on to cutting the plywood. So these cordless jigsaws are the business for cutting anything like this. It makes it so much easier and more convenient. So just cutting the gap around the wheel well. And dry fitting, just to make sure that it is correct. And then cutting a piece that would go in the gaps. I try to have as few joins as possible, so I landed up getting away with just having 3 pieces of ply, which I was pretty happy about. It's not a big deal if you're putting laminate or another type of wood finish on the top of the plywood, but it is important if you're putting vinyl to have as few joins as possible, because obviously the joins, if you have the plywood, if it moves at all, then there can be a point that it can damage the vinyl. Had to get some help here just to cut these boards. Makes it way easier if you had somebody else to help you hold stuff. These table saws. And then more trimming and cutting out corners and profiles for the various parts of the van that are not square. And then dry fit it just to make sure that it looks good, and we're good to go. Okay, let's see here. So I put quite a lot of screws in here, a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to have any places where the plywood can warp or move around or anything like that, and then obviously because the vehicle will be moving and there'll be vibrations, I want to secure it down and not have it move at all. Well, there we have it, folks. The insulation on the floor and the plywood is down, and we're ready to put vinyl down and then start on the walls. Well, I'll actually start on the walls and do that insulation first, but then I'll put vinyl down before I put in the cabinets and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the plan, to put vinyl over the top of this. Pretty happy with how this turned out, and I'm also glad that I changed my mind and went to the 25mm insulation as opposed to 50. 50 would have just been overkill. So yeah, already it's making a difference in terms of sound deadening and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, pretty stoked to get after the walls. I won't get to the walls until after Christmas, but we're going to keep this series going with other updates and info around this conversion. So if you're interested in seeing more of that, then these videos are going to be coming out every Sunday for the foreseeable future. So make sure you subscribe and follow along for those. But yeah, pretty happy with how the van's turning out. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Cheers.